Hi, friends. Okay, so this is take two of trying to go live with my friend Amanda of Activated Living. So, Amanda, as soon as you can see me, I can bring you on camera. We wanted to do a segment for all of our followers on tips for fall. So, going into fall, we are going into a transitional season, a season that that proposes certain challenges to us and that also has certain advantages. So when we know how to work with nature rather than against it, we can amplify those things for ourselves and make it easier on ourselves. So before I bring her on, I'm going to introduce you guys a little bit to my friend Amanda. Amanda and I connected on Instagram a number of years ago just over our love of nature and our just wanting to live close to the land and using herbs and plant medicine and that type of thing. So Amanda Michelle is the creator and owner of Activated Living. Activated Living is a platform that connects everything mind, body, and soul. She is also the host of the Activated Living podcast, which I have been on, which is available on iTunes and Spotify. Amanda shares how you can tune into your unique gifts, heal from within, and live a holistic lifestyle centered around health and wellness. From awakening to your inner intuitive gifts to practicing ancient and sacred applications, Activated Living serves as a place for you to find your medicine and awaken your soul. So I'm going to bring Amanda on. Connection. Says it's adding you. Okay.
Hi.
How is it?
I don't hear any delay. I don't hear any echo, so I think we're good.
Okay, yay! Okay, second try was worth it. Okay,
Yes.
so I just read through your bio, Amanda. I told these guys this you're an amazing person that you and I connected through Instagram about our love of nature, our love of earth care, and also people care through herbs and plant medicines, and that we've been collaborating off and on over the years. I've been on your podcast. We'll be again on your
Yeah,
podcast.
I'm so
Um,
excited too.
yeah. Yes, me too. We're going to have so many juicy things to talk about. So, we're going to be talking today. It's sort of a preview of what the podcast is going to be about.
hmm
And we're going to be talking about moving into fall and fall being a transitional season, some of the challenges that we see in fall for ourselves, but some of the advantages that we can use to leverage ourselves into better health, wellness, state of mind, those types of things. So
Totally.
today we wanted to just give you guys a little bit of a glimpse of some of the things that we do and that we work with specific to fall. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me on. I love just chatting with you. You're just a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, likewise, likewise. So I hope that we can impart some new knowledge for people today. I know even just looking over your notes for today and for the podcast, I learned things that I didn't know. So I'm excited to jump in.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think what I'll do, Amanda, is I'll give a little bit of a broad overview from the traditional Chinese medicine standpoint and from the Ayurvedic standpoint, some of the things that are happening right now seasonally.
Perfect.
And then I think that's going to be a really great jumping off point for you to talk about some of the specific things that you wanted to bring up today, such as grounding practices, yerba mate, cacao, all of the amazingness that comes from plant medicine, and so on and
Yes.
so forth.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so a lot of you know that I work in holistic health, but a lot of you may not know that I have specific training, not just in aromatherapy, but also with some exposure to traditional Chinese medicine and to Ayurvedic medicine, which are two of the oldest healing practices on the planet. And Amanda's actually going to bring a third today, which is South American viewpoints on traditional medicine, which I have so much to learn about, and I can't wait to learn more.
Don't we
And
all? I have so much to learn about that too. So.
I know I always laugh when people are like, "Oh, do you feel like, you know everything you need to know to be a good herbalist or whatever?" And it's like, "No, I mean, like some herbalists spend their entire life just on one plant. So
Yeah,
there's never going to be an end to learning, and that's one of the things I love about what we do with holistic health. So
totally.
what we learn from these perspectives, whether it's South American or it's Indian or it's Chinese, is that the more in tune we can live with the cycles of nature, because we are a part of nature, which is something we've forgotten,
Yeah.
we will actually be healthier and better off. So moving into fall from the end of summer, if we just want to take a broad perspective on this, we can learn that whatever is happening seasonally is for us if we know what to look for,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
So 100%. So, when we're moving out of late summer, and you know what's so interesting about traditional Chinese medicine is that
Mhm.
there's actually 5 seasons. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. There's only
Yes.
4. Tell
They
me.
consider, yeah, yeah. So they consider late summer, about an 18-day period preceding the fall equinox,
Oh,
is its own
beautiful.
season. Yeah.
Okay.
And I bet you can probably guess what the element is for that season. You
Yeah.
want to take a stab at it?
For going into fall,
Hmm.
is it metal or is fall metal?
Fall is metal, and
Okay.
moving into metal is earth.
Okay, makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does make sense. The more you understand elemental stuff, the more, and every day I'm just like, oh, making these connections from these different things. So
Totally.
we've come out of summer, which, from Ayurveda is a real pitta time, which is a lot of heat, a lot of humidity. Sometimes our bodies get really irritated during this season. We may be having, manifestations of that through skin conditions or just irritability. Hot and bothered is a real thing.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
fire, right?
a lot of fire elements. What's also really great about summer is that we are in high activity time. So it's a very yang season, a season of action. We are doing all of the work to prepare for the harvest.
Hmm.
Then we hit this late summer season. And the late summer season is focused literally around the harvest itself. That is what
Mm,
it is.
yeah,
So whether you're still living an agricultural lifestyle like I am or you're not, you can even look at this symbolically, like, what have I been working on that I can start bringing in the harvest with?
right.
And then how can I connect back to earth element, which is something that we're going to focus on during our live today.
Hmm.
And why is that important? Well, transitions between seasons are always unsteady times that for many of us can feel very ungrounded.
Hmm.
And especially moving into fall season, we're going to start having a lot more cold. We're going to start having a lot more wind, which is the very opposite of earth element. So
Right.
whenever we have excess of something, we want to balance it with the opposite. So, we want to talk to you guys today about grounding practices and some very specific things that we can do to bring in earth elements into our daily lives through plant medicine and really simple, easy lifestyle choices that we can make, some of which are completely free.
It's funny too, the
So,
ones that are always like super free and available to everyone are usually the ones that people have the most resistance to.
I know what's with that.
I don't know. It's one thing I've always noticed though.
It's so true. It's so true. It's like we feel if we are not paying money for it, that it doesn't have value, but it actually
Exactly.
has a ton of value. And I think so I'll just go with this and then I want you to take it from here because you're going to talk
Totally.
about specific grounding and earthing practices for fall. Is that grounding and earthing can really help to anchor us when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling stressed out. And if we're in a high activity season, moving into a lower activity season, we need to start dialing down our outward activity and start looking inward. So, what are some of the ways, Amanda, that we can practice some grounding and some earthing? And what does that even mean, first of all?
So, grounding and earthing, we hear that a lot, especially if you're into more holistic ways of living. But pretty
Mm-hmm.
much what we're doing is we're grounding ourselves to the ground. So, one of the most easiest ways that we can do that is walking barefoot. Even if you live in a suburban area, like out here in the desert, I live in a little like suburban community area, but I'll still walk my dog barefoot. And I might look like a total crazy lady, but being able to fully like connect to the ground really does energize you. And I know that there's also like, there's even like blankets that can like connect to like the grounding port in your house. And you start getting like these electromagnetic fields, like just totally like there's a positive and negative ion thing that happens. I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to pretend to know. But there's so many ways that we can utilize grounding to kind of help bring us back into balance.
Mm-hmm.
I also really I know that there's a big surge of Japanese influence. Like, we have like the Marie Kondo method of cleaning and decluttering, and also hearing forest bathing is a huge
Yes.
thing that we see in Japanese culture. And it's basically just enjoying time in nature. Don't need to go to a forest if you're not close to one. Just be in nature and fully bathe yourself in the sound, bathe yourself in the sunlight. be connected to the earth and just kind of allow yourself to slowly just get back into homeostasis, right? Like this is the most easiest thing that we can do. I know that it's also like very ableist to say like go into nature, and like I know some people aren't able to do that. But even if you're in your own backyard and you have even like a little patch of grass, sitting on the grass, maybe bring some tea, allow yourself to ground, be thankful and grateful for everything and the elements around you. And speaking of tea, an interesting, beautiful grounding tea that comes from South America is yerba mate.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very earthy. It's very, please educate me if I'm saying this word wrong. It's pungent, right? Or is it astringent?
Yes.
Pungent.
I would say it's pungent, yeah.
I would say that too. It's a very pungent, very earthy flavor. A lot of people that aren't used to those kinds of flavors and maybe might be used to more sweeter teas, it's going to definitely be a learning curve of like kind of introducing all of these other earthy flavors into your palate. But it's a very strong energy. I always say it has like grandfather energy. And like what I mean by that is it's very powerful. There's also a tea that's really great for grounding called guayusa that comes from South America as well. The difference between these two, they have the same amount of antioxidant properties. They have the same amount of healing and regenerative properties. However, yerba mate is sun-grown, while guayusa is shade-grown. And so
interesting.
In herbalism, like we kind of identify like the potency and the powerful amount of how a plant can regenerate and how it can live in its environment. So if you can have a plant that's thriving in these subtropical environments under the hot, hot sun, it's safe to say that there's probably a lot of powerful properties that come from that plant. Because there's also so much energy that it's taking in, it's also very potent in its flavor. So if you're looking for something that might be a little bit less potent, or like you want a little stepping stone, I would say try guayusa. It's still going to have the same amount of beautiful grounding properties. It's just going to taste a little bit lighter than yerba mate.
Do you happen to know, is there a difference in caffeine content between those two?
I think that there's going to be more higher amounts of caffeine in yerba mate. I could be wrong, but from what I remember, because I would be able to drink like guayusa, I remember learning about it living in Mexico. I could drink it in the morning, drink it in the evening, drink it in the middle of the day. I didn't feel any spikes of energy, but then I did notice that there were specific times in the day where I would only drink yerba mate, which would be like earlier in the morning for me to kind of get that like caffeine rejuvenation.
Yes.
I think that those two are really awesome, beautiful plants that you can try to incorporate. Yerba mate is a lot more available than guayusa. I think you'd probably have to order that online. It's not readily found on like the supermarket shelf.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It has like a very sweetness to it, natural sweetness to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the yerba mate the one that's traditionally drank out of a gourd?
Yes, it is traditionally drank out of a gourd. What it is a bunch of loose leaf tea, and you can like put it all the way up to the top of where the gourd is. You add your water into it, and it still just looks like this, like a bunch of herbs. It's not like it's not gonna look like a tea like you have like regular. You know, you're gonna have a lot of components into it. And you have a bombilla. It's a little straw. It's a little metal straw that has a bunch of, it's like a filter at the bottom, so you can drink the actual tea without getting all of those leaves and stuff in your teeth.
Yeah. A straw is a great idea. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I brought up the gourd because now I want to segue a little bit into foods for fall.
Yes.
And gourds are among the family of foods that are definitely those that carry a lot of earth elements. So those of us that are going out to our garden right now, what are you noticing? Pumpkins are starting to get orange. Squashes are starting to come into season. The gourds are really bright and beautiful. All of these things have direct contact with the earth, so they also contain a lot of earth element. And there's some additional benefits to us for fall. Do you want to maybe talk about some of those?
I'm going to let you jump off on that, and then I'll add to that.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So here's a really interesting thing that I learned, which is that if we were still living subsistence lifestyle where we were completely 100% living off the land,
Mm-hmm.
we have all of these things that come into season late summer, early fall that are high in sugar, more
Mm,
natural sugars, right? So we have the squashes, the pumpkins. I'm even thinking of like some of the fruits like apples and those types of things have a little bit more of a carb value to them than some of our fruits and vegetables that we're eating earlier in the summer. So midsummer, we're eating things high water content to cool down that heat element.
mm,
Now we're eating things with a little bit more carbs to help stoke that metabolism a little bit.
right.
And what some of the scientists are saying is that they believe that this was somewhat by design, that we would go into the winter season a little bit um, insulin, or what I want to say, glucose intolerant or insulin intolerant, whatever I'm trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
so that we would actually put on a little extra weight to survive the winter season,
Right,
which is an
because nothing's
intriguing thought.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I also kind
So how do we translate that?
of, sorry, go.
Go ahead.
How do we translate that to what?
Yeah, our
Sorry, there was like a
connection is
delay.
getting.
All I heard was how do you translate that?
Yes. So how do we use it, in the modern context where we're not in subsistence anymore? How do we take in a healthy amount of these
Mm-hmm.
without going overboard?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I always like to couple my intake of something that's a little bit higher in sugar with a high quality protein. And I
Okay.
know that you were going to talk about harvest bowls, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have this recipe that I made because it was actually because I was really missing when I was vegan. I was really missing Thanksgiving food. And so I was like,
Oh,
find all of the components that I love about Thanksgiving and make into a vegan bowl. And of course, you can totally add meat to it and everything like that. No different here. Um, but it has there's is a lot of grain because that's something that's going to be a little bit more carb heavy. So you can use brown rice, you can use basmati rice, you can use quinoa. It's very interchangeable. And adding different vegetables. I
mhm.
have squash, I add pumpkin, I add sweet potato. I add a bunch of other different herbs and spices and vegetables. And it's like a freebie that I give people when they sign up for my newsletter. That
Okay.
recipe in the fall is going to be in their inbox. So I will definitely put a link after this into the comments.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to sign up for the newsletter, you're going to automatically get this amazing, free, beautiful, grounding harvest bowl recipe.
I cannot wait to try that.
Yeah.
So please do not forget to give us the link.
I won't. And there's a lot of dill that I put in there, so I know you're gonna
Oh,
like that.
I love dill. I can't get enough of dill. That's just one of those things. And I think those like savory herbs help to cut some of the sweetness of those squashes, pumpkins, and things too. When you're
Totally.
wanting it to be a little bit more savory, like a dill or a sage can be so amazing in something like that. So thank you for sharing that with us. I look
Yeah.
forward to that. Um, just finally, as we wrap up, I know we don't have a ton of time to get into some of the other things that we might talk about in the podcast. I know we're going to talk about, rituals and meditations and practices that you can do that are more grounding, setting your intentions going into the fall season and things like that. But also, I did want to touch on cacao.
Okay.
So, yeah, so cacao, talking maybe just really briefly about the differences between cacao, first of all, what is it, and cocoa. And
Hmm.
then I learned from you that this actually, I always thought it was a traditional practice from the Incas or somebody, that they
Right.
used in ritual, and turns out they don't. So maybe if you want to talk about that a little bit and then share with us like some ethical ways that we can use cacao.
100%. I love this topic, and this is something that's like very like dear to my heart. So thank you for giving me a platform to talk about it. And we will
Absolutely.
totally like go down a rabbit hole in this on the podcast because we'll have a lot more time
Okay.
to get into it.
Yeah.
The difference first between cacao and cocoa, it's a little confusing sometimes because literally the O and the A are just switched around. But cocoa is what I think our parents' generation and maybe us growing up might be more used to or remember the cocoa powder that we mixed into milk and all that junk.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
a chocolate powder that is going to be made from the roasted and ground cacao seeds.
Okay.
Cacao refers to the plant itself and what produces from that tree and that plant, so that you get the cacao pods, the cacao seeds.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
more of like, if you think about it, like the raw version of what we do, like that's stage one, the cacao. And then through
Okay.
different processes, we actually get a cocoa powder, but it's not going to be raw. It's not going to have all those beautiful enzymes and healing properties that are in the raw version. Raw cacao can be utilized by cold pressing it, and that's going to be cold pressing the unroasted beans. And that process is going to keep all of the enzymes, all of the healing properties alive, and that we get for like grounding and healing practices. So a lot of times when you might experience a cacao ceremony, if they're doing it the way that's going to be providing the most nutrient dense form of the cacao, it will be a cold beverage. It's not going to be like hot cocoa or anything like that. And I'm going to try to condense as much as I can into a small amount of time, but it is also important to note our cacao. As a lot of people have seen, the Amazon was just crazy, crazy deforestation that is actually still continuing to happen. We don't really know in terms of scientific data yet of how much of the rainforest in the Amazon was actually deforested, because it's still continuing to do so. However, within those like 1 or 2 weeks that the viral memes were going out about the Amazon being on fire, the federal government of Brazil and a couple other organizations that work on scientific data for the Amazon said that it was about 7,000 square miles that were deforested in that 1 or 2 week period that was going viral a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
And to put that in context for people, in the United States, that's basically a little bit smaller than the state of Jersey. So if you're thinking about the whole state of Jersey is on fire, like that's the amount. It's in that 1 or 2 week period that we saw what highlight in the Amazon a couple weeks ago. As you can imagine, probably then we lost so many natural resources. And if anybody is sourcing their cacao from Brazil or any other parts of South America, I think it's very important to also note that we lost a lot of natural resources because of the deforestation. Ethically, if you have to do a cacao ceremony, if that's something that you are choosing to do and bring forth to people, it's important to be responsible of where you're sourcing it. And I would also say, if you're somebody who does source from South America, I would say, as somebody who is an indigenous person, to please be understanding of how things need to regenerate before we keep taking from the land. Understanding 100%. Maybe we can find other sources like in Guatemala or like in Mexico. But talking about the ceremony itself, there is no record of a cacao ceremony actually being something that's been celebrated in any other ancient cultures. If we're going to talk about the Incas and Mayans and Aztecs, yes, they definitely utilized cacao. They definitely saw it as a revere, like it was definitely like a high potency, beautiful ceremonial aspect of ceremony and ritual, but they never had sit down, prayer, heart opening cacao ceremonies, which is actually a pretty westernized ritual. By holding, we also have the responsibility, I feel like, if we are having ceremonies for profit, and if we also are not including non-Indigenous folks into that ceremony that are leading it, I definitely don't think that it's appropriate for us to be kind of cherry-picking different ancient rituals and then like highlighting that as like, oh, we have an Indigenous ceremony, because it's not an Indigenous ceremony. It's basically like if I found a tree and I grabbed a branch and I sent it to you, I'm like, this is a tree. It's like, that's part of a tree. There's no roots though. There's no branches. There's no leaves. You're missing the main component of it. And that's kind of like what cacao ceremonies are in our Western ritualization. It's like, yes, there is a lot of ceremony that can be revered around cacao. And I know that within different rituals, cacao is a component of ritual. and a component of ceremony, but having a sit down mantra opening ceremony that there's no documentation at all. And yeah, I think also that if we're like using this medicine, because it is medicine, you know, there is components of the cacao that is connected to our heart chakra, that is very opening, that is very welcoming, very grounding. I think if we are using that medicine, I think that it's something that we'll be cutting back on those ceremonies just in honor of like resources, right? Because it doesn't make sense for us to be kind of like having a westernized settler mentality. I feel like, I know that sounds like a very heavy word, but it's like taking resources from a different country, and then number one, you're profiting from it. Number two, you're overutilizing it. And it's like just thinking about the give and the take and the energy. I think that if you're going to be sourcing your cacao, make sure that not only are you paying for your cacao and your whole cacao from your wholesale pricing, I think you should also be, if you're getting your ceremony for profit, and also be getting proceeds to go back into that farm, because those farmers need those resources to keep creating the cacao for all of the harvesting that's going on for all these ceremonies.
Yes, thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, of course. There's like so much more to talk about, but I think in terms of like speaking about the plant itself, I think that just, again, we all have a really big responsibility to use kinds of resources and all kinds of plant medicine ethically.
Yes, 100% agree. I find cacao to be a very powerful medicine that I use intentionally when I need to get creative or when I'm trying to foster connection. Where I happen to source mine from is actually a nonprofit that helps the farmers that are growing the cacao to get a fair wage and things like that. So those places do exist out there, and it's definitely not the same as going to your grocery store and buying your average chocolate bar at all.
Right, totally different. It's a totally different vibe.
Totally different vibe, but it's definitely a plant medicine that I think is very appropriate moving into fall as we're looking at grounding ourselves more and going from outward activity into inward reflection, where we're going to get the apex of that is deep into the winter, but this transitional season is a challenge for a lot of us. So you guys, if you're interested in learning more about that, I want you to go over to intuitiveseason.com and get yourself enrolled in the Intuitive and Seasonal Living Academy, which is an academy that myself and my business partner Corey have constructed for you to use ancient practices to connect with your purpose. And some of the things that we've talked about today are things that we use, and some of the things we talked about today are 100% Amanda. So tell people where they can find you.
I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me on Activated Living. I also have my website, activatedliving.us. If you sign up to the newsletter, again, like I said, you're going to get a beautiful free recipe for a vegan, or if you want to add meat to it, a harvest bowl. And yeah, if you have any questions, or if you have ideas for the podcast, you can always email me. It's hello@activatedliving.us. And yeah, any support on the podcast is amazing. It's Activated Living. You can find it on Apple, iTunes, and you can find it on Spotify.
Okay, so we will be doing a full episode on all kinds of things like we just talked about and much more. So look for that to be released soon.
Totally. Awesome. This was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for having me on, Erin.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge, and I will see you soon.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.